Hello, Tom here from Dungeoneering, and this is my playtest review and how to play guide for Viking Gods, published by TSR in the early 1980s. TSR made several mini games that all had a similar format to them. They came in a plastic case, which appears to have yellowed over time, a saddle stitch rulebook that was black and white and well illustrated on the inside, full color cover, about 18 pages, a full color fold out map that was one-sided, and punch out tokens. They also came with dice, which I no longer have the dice that came with this set, so for this playtest review I'll be using these dice right here. And so with that, let's jump right in and see how to play Viking Gods. Viking Gods is a two-player game in the wargame style of play. One player plays Asgard and is trying to protect Yggdrasil and defeat Loki. Another player is the Forces of Chaos, led by Loki, and they are trying to destroy Yggdrasil. The rulebook describes two modes of play, the first one being a very basic move and attack style of play, where none of the pieces have any abilities other than a strength, and terrain doesn't really matter. The advanced mode has terrain effects, so that moving through terrain is a little more difficult, and also describes a special ability for each of the gods and major characters in the game. The game begins with the Forces of Chaos player placing their tokens on the board, and there's two places that they'll be placing them. They'll place the Frost Giants on the glacier, and they'll place the rest of their characters or their tokens on the Bifrost Bridge here. Yes, this is supposed to be the Bifrost Bridge. And so we'll start with Loki, and we see that Loki has a strength of 4. I don't know if you could read that here, but Loki goes in the spot indicated with the name Loki on it. And then the rest of the fire giants go here, and the other characters such as Garm and Fenris and Jormungandr, they all go down here. And the frost giants all go here in this space. The Asgard player can place any of their tokens here west of the Nordkap River. And you can start by placing Yggdrasil, since this is sort of the most important piece to protect in the game. And you might want to place it here to protect it as from movement through the forest, although it doesn't really matter in the basic game, or over here where the hills. But far away from the Chaos players is probably where you're going to place this. And then you're going to have one special character named Heimdall, who is sort of watching the Bifrost Bridge, and there is a space named Heimdall where you will place him there. The rest of your pieces you can place however you want. You have the gods, which all have strength of 2 or more. And then you have the green tokens, which are the Einherjar, and they have a strength of 1. There's one special token named Hela, which none of the players control, and she has her own special space. So the turn order is very simple, very straightforward. Basically, the Chaos player moves, and then the Chaos player attacks. Then the Asgard player moves, and the Asgard player attacks, and then Hela moves. At the end of the turn, 2 void tokens are placed on the Bifrost Bridge, and no characters or tokens can move onto those spaces. Basically, that's just motivation for the Chaos player to get all of their forces out of there and into the gameplay. Each turn, each piece can move up to 2 spaces. You can move to any open space, 1, 2, 1, 2, but you cannot move into any of the black spaces. These are considered the void. You can move up to 2 spaces until you come to an opponent or an enemy, and then you cannot move any further. So I can move 1, but now I'm next to Heimdall, can't move any further. Once you move all your pieces that you're going to move, then you can go into the combat phase, and um, your attackers can attack anyone that's in an adjoining space that's an enemy. Combat is really quite simple. It requires a little bit of math, not too hard though. So you take the total attack strength of the attackers. In this case, I have Loki and Jormungandr, which are a 4 and a 5, and they're attacking Heimdall, who's a 4. So you take the total of the attackers, subtract the total of the defenders. So 9 minus 4, we have a 5. And that tells us which column we are going to be fighting on. In this case, we are going to be on the 5 or higher column on the combat. There's 5 possible results in any combat. So you'll roll a die, and this will tell you what the result is. The possible results are defenders defeated, which means they're removed from play. Defender retreats, which means the attacker gets to choose which space they are pushed back into. If they cannot move back, if they're blocked, then they are defeated. The attacker is defeated with an AD. The attacker retreats, same rules, except for the defender gets to choose where the attacker retreats to, and if the attacker can't retreat, then they're defeated. Or the other possible result is a draw. So what we'll do here, roll for 1 die, and we get a 1. So in this case, the defender is defeated. So you can see in general that lower is better on this combat table. For convenience, it's also on the board here, and it's color-coded. And once the Chaos Force players do their moves and do their attacks, then the Aesir players can do their moves and do their attacks. And at the end, Hela moves. She can move any direction. You roll 1 die, and she moves a 5, so that direction. And she'll move 3 spaces. So you roll for each one, 1, and then 3. Like that. I guess you could simplify that and just roll once, and then she goes 3 spaces in that direction. 1, 2, 3, and that might be a more streamlined way of doing that. If she moves into a space that goes off the board, then she teleports back to her portal space there. Anytime Hela moves next to another piece, that other piece is defeated and removed from the board. Advanced combat works exactly the same way as basic combat, except that now some of the pieces have special abilities. And there's a handy chart in the back of the rulebook that describes the special abilities that each of the pieces has. So since the pieces have very little description on them, you'd have to compare on the board here on the chart and see that, for example, Loki gets +1 versus Heimdall. So in that example combat we just had, he would have had an additional +1, and that would have bumped up the column. Of course, he was already maxed out, so it wouldn't really matter. But and each piece has a special ability, each of the name pieces. Now, terrain only has one effect on the pieces, and that is their movement. Essentially, it stops them. Once they move onto that terrain, for example, if your piece moves onto a hill terrain, they would stop. If they cross the river, it costs them basically a movement to cross that river. So they would only be able to move 1 space on a turn that they move across the river. And if they are on that terrain, some of them, like Glacier Hill, Woods, and River, give them a -1 to their attack. So terrains are actually really good places for you to put your defenders. It's since attackers will be at a disadvantage. Now there are exceptions. Some creatures or some tokens are not affected by certain terrains, as listed on the chart here. So to summarize, Viking Gods, it is a fun little game. It's actually quite well designed for what it is and for the time it came out. It's a sort of very simplified version of wargaming from that time period. Perhaps the only thing holding it back is the quality of the components, but that's kind of the point. That was a very low-cost game, quick and portable. So in my playtests of the game, They generally run about 1 to 2 hours. The advanced game is definitely a lot more fun than the basic combat, but there is a lot of consulting the table back here, which can slow down play, and you may not be able to see the tactical advantage of certain pieces that you have on the board, constantly checking this. So there are tokens that have been made that have the abilities of the tokens printed on them. And here we can see them. And I'll make these available on my blog, dungeoneering.blogspot.com. In addition, the table on the map has a couple of minor typos on it. So this version cleans it up, which you can print out and use and play. And also, apparently, the original version of this game, the table was slightly different, and this table here has those minor adjustments. Basically, just you'll see just a little bit difference in the +1 and 0 column in the attacker retreats and where the draws are at. Very little effect on the gameplay, but it's minor. So finding a copy of Viking Gods online, say like on eBay, a decent copy might cost, say, 30 or 40 bucks plus shipping. Although you can find high resolution scans of this map online and print it out, and the tokens as well, and just come up with some dice and find a copy of the rulebook, and you can play this at home with a print and play version. All right, thanks for checking out this review, and hope you like it. Later.